And we're a go. Okay, welcome everyone. This is our Living and Working in DC panel. We've got some really great people on the call with us today. And I think we'll dive right on in and get some introductions out of the way. So we'll start, just gonna go across the rows as I see them. So Tracy Patterson, you are first.
Hey, I'm Tracy Patterson. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at Rhodes, and I actually went to high school in the DC area and came to Rhodes from DC. And then I went back to DC and worked there from 85 to 90. So I can say that our network has tremendously grown since I was there, and you've got a great base of support there if you're interested in moving to DC, fabulous alums and parents who are very interested in helping you succeed when you get up there. So that's my plug.
Hi y'all, I'm Liz Moak. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations, and don't have a lot of connection to DC, but I'm glad to help organize and get all of the students on the call today connected with some fabulous people that we have in the area. Okay, Mark.
Oh, okay. Is this just the brief introduction, or do I go through the items that you sent on the email?
So just an introduction now, then I'll go through those questions.
Okay. Yeah, no, my name is Mark Zeldin. I am a parent of Mary Elizabeth Zeldin, who is finishing her junior year. She'll be a senior in the fall. We live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. We're from New Orleans originally. We've been back and forth. This is my third stint. So I've seen a lot over the last 30 years, and I look forward to sharing some tidbits and things that can be beneficial to the group.
Thanks, Mark. Meredith.
Hi guys, my name is Meredith. I graduated from Rhodes in 2012. Thanks Liz for updating my name, I think. I have been in DC since 2016. I spent 3.5 years before that working at Rhodes for President Trout. And now I work for a private equity company in downtown called the Carlyle Group.
Hey, Chrissy.
Hey guys, Chrissy Hendrickson. I have been in DC since I graduated in 2006. So this is year 14 for me. I work for a recruiting firm in DC. So I manage a team that does recruiting for accounting and finance roles here within mostly the private sector. Got my start in recruiting being a CAT intern under Sandy George Tracy. I think we were the inaugural career advisor team interns, and that is where it all began. So thank you, SGT.
Okay, thanks, Chrissy. Anders.
Hi, I'm Anders Reynolds. Graduated 04, moved to DC in 2007. Was planning on staying 3 or 4 years, and I'm on year 12 of that plan. So obviously there's a lot I like about DC, and I think a lot you would like about DC. I am the federal legislative director at the Southern Environmental Law Center, which has a footprint across the Southeast, including Memphis and Tennessee. And I'm happy to be talking to you all today. Looking forward to answering some questions.
Okay, let's see. We'll just kind of keep going across and give students a chance to introduce themselves too. James, you're next.
Hi, I'm James Hugh. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, and I just finished up my junior year.
Okay. Great. Luke?
Hi, yeah, I'm Luke Staffelbach. I'm from South Bend, Indiana. I also just finished my junior year. Yeah, I'm majoring in Spanish and Latin American Studies.
Great. Bella.
Hi, my name is Bella. I'm a senior international studies major, so about to graduate, sort of. And yeah, I'm looking for jobs potentially in DC.
Awesome. Grant.
Hi, I'm Grant Hill, political science major, international studies minor from Memphis, Tennessee, rising senior. So looking for anything in policy or law, all those interest me.
Great. Piyu, did I say your name right?
Yes. Hi, I'm Hugh, and I'm a senior international studies major. So yeah, basically about to graduate, and I'm looking for a future career in either think tanks or policy work.
Great. Sandy, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Sandy George Tracy, Director of Career Services. And I, like Anders, thought I'd be at Rhodes for 2 or 3 years, and I've just finished my 30th year at the college. And this is my cat, Abby. She insists on being on the call. So she comes in
yay!
lap all the time. So, and it's so fun to see Chrissy. I'm
I
so
know,
excited
it's been a
to see you.
while.
It's been so long.
Knight.
Hi, I'm Knight Champion. I work for the college. I'm in the Alumni and Development Office. I lived in DC for 19 years and then moved to Memphis in 2012 to take this job. And I just moved back to DC 2 years ago, and I still work for the college. I travel a good bit when I'm able to travel, and I represent the college at events and do some fundraising. And I live in Alexandria and love working for Rhodes, and I love being in DC. So it's so if you end up in DC, let's keep in touch because I'd love to help you out in any way.
Okay, thanks, Knight. Kaylee?
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm from McKinney, Texas. I'm also class of 2020, so I guess I'm graduating on Saturday. I don't necessarily have a particular interest in DC, but I do need to find a job to fill the few months before my fellowship starts. So I've just been going to all the career services programs.
So, good deal. Sophie.
Hi, my name's Sophie Marr. I'm a political economy major. I'm also class of 2020, so like everyone else, I'm supposed to be graduating on Saturday. I'm interested, however, in urban sustainable development and environmental policy, and also foreign and domestic policy. I'm kind of have a lot of interests, so I'm just kind of eager to be on here and hear what you all do and see if it's something that maybe sparks my interest.
Thank you. Morgan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan. I'm a graduating senior from Jackson, Mississippi. I'm a political science major, business minor, and French, but that's not like I don't use this much anymore. But yeah, I'm just graduating, kind of looking for jobs, especially in the DC area. I'm interested in like public policy, mostly like social policy. I can do a little bit of economic stuff, but like my interest is like social issues. So just looking for opportunities.
Thank you. Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Gain. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I'm also a senior and international studies major. I would eventually like to go to law school, so I'm looking for work in DC, either in the legal field or policy work as well.
Madeline.
Hi, my name is Maggie Scott. I'm a junior or rising senior now, and I'm a double major in Chinese and international studies, minoring in econ, and I'm interested in foreign policy and international political economy.
Great. Ben.
Hey, y'all. My name is Ben Griffith. I'm a class 20 history major, double minoring in Asian studies and political science. And I am supposed to be going and interning on Capitol Hill in the House of Representatives for Congressman Steve Cohen's office come July, but that's currently up in the air with the coronavirus. And I would like to, my original plan was to hopefully be able to go up on the Hill and turn that into a full-time position on the Hill. And I would love to work on the Hill. I interned there last summer for Nashville's congressman's office. But you know, things change. I'm generally interested in a lot of political areas and legal areas, specifically defense and foreign relations.
Great. Ellie.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie Barmish. I am also in the class of 2020. I guess we're recent graduates. I'm a political science major and Spanish double major. Like a lot of other people, I was planning on moving on to DC right after graduation, but that's been shaken up a little bit with everything that's going on. And I'm planning to work in legislative advocacy work.
Awesome. Sabrina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sabrina. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and again, class of 2020, graduating virtually next week. I'm a health equity major. I'm interested in healthcare, and I also, like Ellie, I had an opportunity in DC, and that's kind of up in the air right now. So I'm kind of just looking around, interested in healthcare policy and yeah, consulting in that area.
Sarah?
Hi, my name is Sarah. I am class of 2020 and I majored in international studies with a minor in business. I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do, but I know I want to do it in DC. So that's not helpful at all, but that's the plan.
Okay, great. And Sanjun?
Hi, I'm.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm June, rising senior,
Okay.
Majoring in international studies. Currently this summer, I have an internship with the Stimson Center, working for their 38 North program. So I'll be working with American foreign policy on the Koreas and how to engage Congress on that.
Okay, fantastic. So I think I'll move into some of the questions that I have for our panelists. And so the first one is, how did you get plugged into your, either if this position is kind of like your first position in DC, or what your current position is, if you've moved around through different career paths and whatnot while being in DC, how did you get plugged into that kind of first position when you got there? And we can just kind of move down the row. So we can start with Mark.
All right, so the question is first position and or current position?
And or current, just kind of however that works makes
All
the
right.
best sense for you.
I don't know. I think first, I think they're both relevant to this group, especially in the first position. I happen to have a friend of our family who had worked for a congressman from Louisiana who's now since retired and had an opportunity to do an internship. So I've heard several people mention the internship thing, and that really helped springboard. It helped allow me to understand how the House of Representatives sort of worked, you know, and how does one get a full-time position once you're on the inside. It certainly makes that easier. It also started networking and just interacting with people from different states and different parts of the country and different issues. 26 years later, I had people that were involved in the campaign for then candidate Trump. I was not on the campaign and not invested in the election at all. I was even out of the country the day before the election. But there were people that I had known for 20 and 25 years when I was just out of college. So the position that I have now, which is a director of budget and finance for the Secretary of Labor, really is a result of relationships that I've made, you know, starting from that first position as an internship. So for those who are going that route, and I know it's a little bit unsettled right now, that if I'm any guide, that's an excellent way to parlay the relationships. A lot of it's about relationships. A lot of people know foreign affairs, or they know certain foreign languages, or they have skill sets in that way. It's a lot of times the networks that I've had have been beneficial to afford me to get some of the positions that I've had. I've had some positions in government, but I've worked in the private sector a lot too over the last 30 years. But it's those relationships gained from those initial internships 30 years ago that are beneficial all the way to this day.
Thanks. Meredith.
I would pretty much echo exactly what Mark said about, as far as it really is about making and building relationships and creating a network. For me, I actually, for my first job in DC, it was an internship the summer after my junior year at Rhodes. I actually went to a career networking event at a brewery where I was not old enough to actually have an alcoholic beverage. So I felt a little awkward in that sense. But luckily, I quickly got to know Barrett Haga, which is a name that you will definitely hear more than once, especially from me. Barrett got me looped in. He gave me all the information. He works at the Economic Development Administration within the Department of Commerce. And he got me looped in, and I went through the whole interview process, and I spent that summer there at the Department of Commerce in their public affairs office. And I still to this day talk to people that I made friends with either during the internship, at the job, on the job, or the friends that I made that I lived on campus at GW that summer. And my current job, I kind of preface it by saying, don't necessarily do it the way I did it. Because I think I told Liz this back in December. I actually kind of cold applied to a position at Carlisle, and pretty quickly figured out that I wasn't a good fit for the position, and the position wasn't a good fit for me. And so I told the recruiter in HR that I had been working with, and she said, okay, but don't, we want you to come work here. Like, here are a couple of other jobs, take a look and tell me what you think. And one thing led to another, and I've been there for almost 4 years. But I think so. When I started working at Carlisle, I didn't really find out about my job through a network or a connection or anything. But I will say that Barrett was one of my professional references. So at least he didn't say anything mean about me, I guess, when they called him. But yeah, that's kind of how I got hooked into DC, and just love it. And I initially thought, yeah, maybe I'll be here for a few years, but now I'm kind of thinking, okay, maybe I could be here for longer. So.
Okay, great. Chrissy?
Yeah, and so I love answering this question for our Rhodes audience, because I am still with the job that I found when I originally moved to DC 14 years ago. And I found that job through a sorority sister of mine from Rhodes, Kappa Delta. And she just, Shelly Spring, and she's actually still with the company as well. So she had gotten placed at Boston Consulting Group through the agency, the recruiting agency. And I asked her, as a recruiting assistant, and I asked her how she got that job. She referred me to the agency, and I've been working for that agency for since then. So I've had several different jobs within the agency, but literally from, just like Meredith, like from a networking, this was like a more informal. She was a friend of mine. She's from Atlanta, so was I. Anyone here know Shelly Spring? She's a hard one to forget. Yes, Anders, I'm sure. So networking with Rhodes grads, it really does work. But I will say, Meredith, you can also get a job through cold applying. I'm a recruiter, and so we place people that apply and send their resume. It's all about making a combined strategy of like doing networking and cold applying, and doing coffee informational interviews, and everything else. So that's my story.
Okay, thanks, Chrissy. And Anders.
I agree with Chrissy. I think you should talk to as many people from Rhodes living in DC as possible. Talk to everybody. And not all of them are going to be great connections, to be totally honest. Sometimes people drop the ball. Don't let that discourage you. Just keep having those conversations and keep putting yourself in front of people. Every time you see a job, if you remember somebody in that industry, send them a quick email and say, hey, I don't know if you remembered, but we talked. And I wanted to flag this for you just in case you know anybody. And even if you don't hear back from them, the next time it happens, do it again. Just constantly remind them. DC is a busy place, and sometimes people forget to hold up their end of the bargain. So just keep talking to them, keep communicating. I promise they won't be annoyed. I'm not annoyed when it happens to me. I'm actually really grateful people jog my memory. That said, I want to echo what Mark said. I think the Hill, if you don't already have a clear path or your heart set on a particular job in DC, I think the Hill is a great way to get in. And that's for a couple reasons. One, if you're not sure what you want to do, you're going to get a taste of everything. You're going to be able to work on every subject matter under the sun. Secondly, you're going to meet a lot of people, both on the Hill and from off the Hill, who are going to lobby you. And so your network is just going to grow exponentially in a short amount of time. And the third reason, and this may be more important to some people than to others, but if feeling advancement in one way or another, either through greater pay or greater title, is important to you, the Hill is just about the only place you're ever going to see any advancement in your first 3 years anywhere. If you go straight to a think tank, you're probably going to have that title and that pay grade for a while. But on the Hill, the turnover is so fast. The churn is just so great. And no matter where you start in 6 months, you'll be doing something different with greater responsibilities, and it will just land in your lap at a speed at which you'll be surprised. So if you don't—
And the pay, there's nowhere to go but up. With their
there's nowhere to go but up. Right. So that would be my advice if you don't already have a clear path, would be to start looking at that.
Okay, thank you. So thinking about kind of the different industries that our panelists are in, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to start working in that field? And we'll just go kind of back in order. So Mark.
Okay. Well, you know, there is a bit of an irony. I'm actually was in distribution and shipping and transport before I came into the government again and working at the moment for the Department of Labor. But I will say this: one of the things that's interesting, I've heard a lot of people when there was the introductions about, you know, interest in foreign policy, for example, or those other things. At least from the government side, and there's, Chrissy mentioned, there's definitely a lot of non-governmental things in Washington, no doubt about that. But obviously it's dominated, I guess, from that. There's like, let's just use foreign affairs. I think this would be the bit of advice that I would give to folks. A lot of people would automatically gravitate to the State Department, for example, which makes sense. That's where a lot of our international operations are. But a lot of the departments have an international part to it. So it may not be as competitive, and I just say that as a younger person coming in, you know, when there's a lot of competition, you know, it's difficult. And Rhodes definitely carries some cachet, but there's just a lot of competition. So a lot of departments that you wouldn't think from the governmental side have that space. Like the Department of Labor has what's called the Bureau of International Labor Affairs. It's heavily involved in combating sex trafficking and human trafficking and things of that sort. It works with the State Department and with some of the other entities, but it's not, people wouldn't think of it, right? You know, I didn't have any idea of that. I've got friends that work at the Agriculture Department, USDA, and they've got significant international operations. I have friends that work at EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. They have international operations. So just to use that as a guide, there's often, the government is big. There are many aspects of it here in Washington, D.C. If you want to go the policy route, and I'm just using foreign policy as an example. There are many options where you take 100 people and 90 of them gravitate to the State Department if they're interested in international space. You know, I think smarter people, and that probably includes a lot of people on this call, will be able to do a little bit of an extra work and realize, oh, okay, there are some operations in that space here at this department that might just be 2 or 3 people going instead of 50. And I've had conversations with people that do our international programs, career employees that have been there for 10 and 20 years. And that's the message that I get from them, that I didn't really, you know, that there is just less knowledge, broadly speaking. So if you spend a little bit of time doing that research, I think you'll find that there are opportunities in that space, even at an entry-level position, that you might not have thought, at least on the surface, aren't as obvious.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Meredith.
I would kind of just build on what Mark said, you know, put in the time and effort before into looking for a job, into looking for a place that's a good fit for you and that you're a good fit for also. But particularly, at least with my experience in private equity, is also be willing to put in the time after you've gotten the job. You know, I think a lot of times with a first job, it's kind of like, yay, I'm done, I've gotten it, you know, like, and you know, you really, if you want to keep moving, like we talked about before, if you want to keep moving up, you do kind of have to put in the hours, put in the extra time. But also I would counteract that by also saying you should be mindful of, you know, being able to unplug and take time, especially in the digital world in which we live anyway, but especially now, after everything has gone so remote, you know, it really taking that time to carve out a little bit of non-screen time has also been pretty key for me over the last few years as well.
Okay, thanks, Meredith. Chrissy?
Sure. Sorry, I'm trying to close some windows. I'm on my work computer and I seem to be lagging. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
I can, we're good.
Okay. Oh, sorry, so sorry. Okay. Anyway, is anyone here like interested in recruiting at all? Can I just see, raise the hands? It's all right if you're not. Oh, Morgan. All right. Okay, Sophie. Okay. So I didn't know about like recruiting as a profession necessarily. I knew about it a little bit because of, you know, my work with career services. But recruiting as a profession is technically a sales job. And I never thought as a psychology major, I would be in something that was sales, business development, but I work for a recruiting agency, which means that I go out to employer, like Anders used to work for Pew, and we staff for Pew, Pew Charitable Trust. So if they're looking to hire a director of finance, I would go and pitch my agency to them. I find that sales jobs, and when I say sales, I mean business development, I mean, you know, consulting. There's a lot of different phrases that really describe sales jobs. And I think they're actually good for Rhodes grads because it, you know, I learned from my liberal arts psychology degree how to debate and present a case and talk about objections and think critically. So I would say, even if you're not interested in recruiting necessarily, a private sector job, like anything in business development or consulting, you know, professional services, that's something that can that you can really use your degree in. And I feel like I'm getting a little off track here with what your question was, but I was also, while I was trying to close some windows, doing some research because something Mark said made me curious. And I just did a quick Google, but in DC, the largest single employer is the federal government, and they employ 360,000 individuals. But the second largest, or the industry with the largest amount of employees is business and professional services, and they employ 960,000, right? So DC is not necessarily just government, and I think that's really important to realize. I think absolutely the Hill is an awesome place to start, but just make sure that you're looking at consulting firms, and I know someone mentioned think tanks. That's a great place to start, but also, you know, actual like private sector sales jobs. You know, if you're not afraid of sales will teach you a lot of business skills that are helpful to all kinds of careers. So, so that's what I would suggest, whether you're interested in recruiting or anything that's more business, private sector.
Thanks, Chrissy. Anders.
My advice would be, don't rush into grad school. Take a few years, work any job you want, think about what you want to do, and get some of that very valuable experience. I can tell you that when we're hiring and we look at a resume, a year of experience is probably worth 2 or 3 years schooling. So don't rush straight in. I think it's actually a little bit harder to land a job if you have 2 degrees and no work experience than it is to have only a single degree and a few years of work experience. So take your time. A theme I will return to often is you have way more time than you think to figure out what you want to do. So enjoy yourself, come to DC, do almost anything, and get some experience under your belt.
Yeah, and when Anders talks about experience, also, I meant to say this earlier, the agency, the team on my agency I used to work for was an administrative staffing agency called Track Services. It's now called Agilon. And I used to place Rhodes grads in admin jobs, administrative jobs, every single year. Sandy would send me people. I would, you know, get them connected with either temp jobs or permanent jobs. Experience in an administrative, even like being a receptionist. I know that seems sort of rough coming out of, you know, your 4 years of college. That's still really valuable experience. So definitely don't overlook those kinds of roles.
Great. So, you know, this panel, yes, is about working in DC, but it's also about living in DC, because I know a lot of, you know, when I was getting out of college, I moved to New York kind of cold. So I didn't really know what to expect. So having an opportunity to kind of provide some of that perspective, I think, is very helpful. So what are, from y'all's experiences and perspectives, what are some of the do's and don'ts of the DC housing market, whether you're looking to rent or buy, and what your thoughts on having a car in DC? Is it necessary? Can you survive without it?
Wait, none of you guys are looking to buy, are you?
You never know. I put the option out
You're
there.
Nuts.
If they're looking to buy, I need to talk to you guys about buying a home then.
You never know. I just put the option out there.
I'll just keep talking because I can't shut up. It's a very tough time to be looking for a job in DC for for obvious reasons. But I'm going to say unfortunately, because the reasons behind it are unfortunate. But unfortunately, it's a very good time to be looking for real estate in DC. A lot of people are leaving right now. They're either going home to weather things out, or they have been furloughed or lost a job. The market I know is pretty amenable to folks who are looking right now. It's really hard to go wrong in DC as long as you're near a metro area. I don't think you need a car. That said, after a few years, I needed a car just so I could escape on the weekends. But you can not just survive, but thrive without a car. You'll be okay. The only other tip I'll mention related to living in DC is as you're applying for jobs in DC, I think a lot of employers might blanch if they see that you're not already in the city. So I would recommend you get here as soon as you can, even if it means sleeping on a couch. But short of that, a trick you could use is to find a friend who's up here and ask if you can put their address on your resume. Just do it. Let employers know that you're, committed to being in DC. You're already thinking about it. You know where you're going to land. I think that's one of the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. As a recruiter, I'm not going to call someone who's not already here, and that's what I did, and that's what literally I've recruited all my friends to live in DC. So my best friends from Rhodes both live here now, which is awesome. Jenny and Joanna. Jenny works for the Washington Post. Ping Liz for her contact information. Joanna works for Booz Allen. Ping Liz for her contact information. Bother them a lot. Tell them I referred you. And so I think that you can list somebody else's address. I think that's even better than not including your address at all. Every person who I've successfully placed has kind of moved here and then found a job, because it's so much easier to job search when you're already in DC. And in terms of like the where to live thing, I moved to DuPont Circle, shared an apartment with the girl I met on Craigslist. It was great. Did that for a year without a car. Then decided I really did want a car, moved to Arlington, and that's where I've been ever since. Group houses I found on Craigslist were great for me. And then I bought a condo in Arlington in 2012. So, I mean, that's, I think you can work it both ways. I don't know how good the metro is going to be for a while, but I think you can figure it out.
Hey, Meredith.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say like ditto, but ditto. When I moved to DC, I automatically knew I wasn't bringing my car, because when I lived in Memphis, I had a car in Memphis, and I really didn't use it very much at all. And also it's extremely expensive compared to Memphis, to have a car in DC. I think my insurance premium was gonna like almost triple. So that to me was enough incentive to leave the car. But I haven't had a car since 2016, and it's been okay so far. But when I first moved, I actually stayed with friends out in Alexandria. But I also did the resume trick of using a DC address. One of my really good friends from the summer that I was an intern was living in DuPont, and I just sent her a text and I said, hey, can I use your address? And she was like, yeah, you can crash whenever you want. And so I did actually crash in her apartment a couple of times for interviews and stuff right after I graduated from Rhodes. But my first apartment in DC, I lived in Cleveland Park in a really cute little studio. And then, which I found literally by walking into the building and saying, hey, do you guys have any apartments available? But then the apartment that I'm in now and the apartment that I've been in for 2 years, I found on Craigslist. So.
Isn't it crazy how Craigslist hasn't changed in like 15 years?
No, and it freaked me out a little bit, but it worked. I love my landlords. They're not
amazing
crazy.
how it's still going strong.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just a few. First of all, I absolutely love living in Washington, D.C. I don't at the moment, but for all of 2017 and 2018 and much of 2019 before my wife and our two younger kids moved up here to Washington, I rented a room from a friend of mine who lives by the Washington Nationals baseball park. And that area is just incredible. Again, some of these comments I'm going to make are before the last 60 days, but it's hard to know how some things are going to play out. But there's just energy everywhere. There's something for everyone to do. I always liked living close to a metro. I happened to, at that particular time, I've lived on Capitol Hill. I've lived in Alexandria. Part of the reason why I lived in Alexandria for a time is I wanted to be close to Reagan National Airport because I did fly a lot, and so that was a consideration. But I think Anders said it earlier. Just, you know, if you're again, notwithstanding the metro issues, if you're close to a metro station and with Lyft and Uber and those things, I found it just wonderful not to have a car, actually, just not to have to deal with that on a general basis. And housing, there's just everything. I mean, the rents are certainly a lot higher than what I'm used to in Louisiana and in New Orleans, but there's just always growth. There's always construction. There's always opportunities. There's opportunities. I mean, I rented from someone, but I did have my own private room and my own private bath. I just think housing options are generally speaking, not an issue of, I think it's almost not embarrassment of riches, but just trying to decide, okay, where do I want to live? Is proximity to work better? All those variables, but it's one I absolutely love it, and I know some of y'all that are here or coming here are gonna finagle your way and do what I did starting 30 years ago.
I'll just say, as you're doing your job networking, do housing networking too. Ask people where they lived when they first got here. Ask them if they have a room available. I know personally of a Rhodes alum who has a basement apartment that they rent for cheap to Rhodes students. I'm not going to tell you his name because I already told Ben about 3 weeks ago, so he gets first dibs. But there are those people out there, so make sure you ask that question too as you're doing your network.
Can I recommend also, and you know, I never had a car. I was there for 5 years, never had a car. And I lived in Arlington and Old Town Alexandria. I always worked in the city. And this was way before the metro had just completely quadrupled in the service area. So, but what I was going to say is if you have not joined the DC Links Cats Facebook page, that's a great place. If you get on there, people are constantly advertising for roommates or letting people know that, hey, I'm getting out of my lease. This is such a great apartment. I hate just to go to anybody. So let me know if you want this. So there's lots of that's great resources for any kind of housing and looking for roommates and things like that, as well as internships and jobs.
Absolutely. It's probably one of our most active alumni Facebook pages. So you can always find something there. I would highly recommend you join that page.
That's like the first thing I say anytime anyone asks me anything about DC and Rhodes. I'm like, join the Facebook group. That's where everything is.
Yes, it is. So that wraps up most of kind of specific content questions I have, unless there's like kind of, I had, a kind of final thoughts option for our panels. Like if there's one thing that you know now about living and working in DC that you wish you knew when you were getting started, what is that?
Should I go first?
You can. You're right. Like you're in order on the screen.
What I would say is, I wish I would have bought something at DuPont Circle 30 years ago.
Yeah.
No, seriously, what I wish I would have known 30 years ago when I first came to Washington was the importance of knowing how to write. Because most of the people I think in this group aren't going to be working in production agriculture or things of that sort. They're going to be working computers and documents and document review and web content and all those sorts of things. So I wish I had paid more attention to that. I made up for it at some point, but I didn't realize how critical it was to be able to write. And I don't mean Dante prose or something, but I just mean the ability to write succinct things crisply and without a lot of editing. I found to be quite important to a lot of the jobs that either I've had personally or in the spaces that I have been. The people that have done better professionally that I've seen over the last 30 years oftentimes correlate to those that knew how to write.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Meredith.
Oh, I'm already unmuted. I think that's super important. The ability to write, also the ability to kind of goes hand in hand, but clearly and effectively communicate. I think coming from Rhodes, obviously, I think we all have a little bit of an edge in that sense, just because we're not, when we started out, we weren't just immediately funneled into an engineering program or a mathematics program or an economics program. We got those extra classes. We got the literature classes. We had the extra experience, whether it was through internships or in the classroom. And as far as, gosh, I was trying to think as far as something, if there was one thing that I had known when I first moved to DC, I guess, I don't know, I guess maybe just keep an open mind about things, whether it's a job or an apartment or a living situation, or even just a neighborhood or extracurricular activities. Just jump in, and don't hold back. Immediately get involved, whether it's at your office or if you go attend church or really anything. DC has so much to offer, and I feel like I've barely even scratched the surface. So.
So yeah, I mean, I hesitate to come in here as a Debbie Downer, but I feel like it is a responsibility I have to give everyone a reality check. I heard a lot of people want to get into international development and policy and legislative affairs and all of this stuff. Remember, so does every other college graduate in the entire US that moves to DC, and especially in the current economic climate. Yes, apply to those jobs, but please, like Meredith said, keep an open mind. And again, what I mean is, if it's a data entry job, but it's a company that you're okay working for, go for it. If it's a receptionist job and it's a tiny nonprofit you've never heard of, but you get an offer, you should take it. I mean, it's going to be a really rough market out there, especially for recent college grads, extremely competitive. I think that it's great to have your, that goal of pursuing, an international development. But I tell you, after interviewing recent college grads for so many years, everyone comes out wanting that and having that as a goal. If you can differentiate yourself by saying, hey, I'm willing to start at the bottom, do administrative work. You need some filing done. Got it. I'll do that. That's going to get you your foot in the door much more likely to get your foot in the door.
It's making yourself indispensable, and then you are able to work your way up. Anders.
I'm going to share my email and cell phone with everybody in the group chat. Please use it. Before Mark even said anything about writing, I was going to say one thing that I think you guys all have a leg up on is how well Rhodes has prepared you to write things. I consistently see that Rhodes alums are much better writers than the graduates of other places. And so please lean into that, never stop trying to hone your skill, but I want you to feel like right now you actually do have a leg up on most people. And that's one measure about what you do. If I could give one piece of advice, it's something I said earlier. You have time. If you move to DC and you start a job just to pay the bills and you find out you don't like it, it's okay. You have time to start again, and you probably even have time to start a third time. What I moved to DC to do, I didn't end up doing. I fell into the role I have today, and I absolutely love it. But if you had asked me 10 years ago, would I be doing this? I would have said no. And if you had asked me when I moved to DC if I would be doing this, I would have said no. And you had asked me a year into my time in DC if I'd be doing this, I would have said no. So you have time to figure it out. Don't feel like you have to get it right from the get-go. Come up here, do some work, meet some people, explore some stuff, think about what you really want to do long-term. And then you've got years and years to make the moves to get you into the right position. So don't panic. You're going to be okay.
Okay. Thank y'all so much. So we've got a little bit of time left. Do any of the students in attendance have questions for our panelists today? Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I just want to first off say thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time to speak with us today. It means a whole lot. but specifically, Chrissy, I'm really interested in like how one is to like find these sales jobs, you know, consulting jobs. What is the best way you would recommend as a recruiter to go about looking for that?
Yeah, send me your resume. So Liz, are you gonna send? I can put my info in the chat too. But yeah, send me your resume. For first of all, and second of all, once you start applying on, I think it's LinkedIn. If you look for business development associate, or so I'm just going to throw some titles out there because I think it's important to look at a broad range of titles. So business development associate, business development specialist, or research assistant, even sometimes resource specialist. Sometimes that's a random title for salespeople. Trying to think about any others that I know of. Some might come to me, but once you start your search on LinkedIn Jobs, and again, LinkedIn Jobs, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but LinkedIn Jobs is definitely the source that I recommend in terms of applying cold. It'll start suggesting titles for you to go ahead and pursue. So from a cold application standpoint, I think that's a good start. And then again, networking with Rhodes grads is also a good way because they can tell you what that job is called within their company. And then can lead you there. Whenever you guys have any interviews or informational interviews with anyone, asking what their job title was when they first started, so you can educate yourself on what kinds of roles to apply to. Like mine was just recruiter, so I guess that's pretty straightforward. But there are other positions in my company called staffing manager and business development manager and executive recruiter. I think that knowing and getting some broad variety of titles is going to help too. So I think that's everything that I would have to say on that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Luke.
Thanks again for all your great advice. Andrew's kind of hit on this earlier, but I was wondering what your guys' opinion was regarding grad school and getting a job in DC. And kind of the order to go about that, and if any of you have gone through that, any advice you might have.
Well, I can talk about this because I totally agree with Anders. Okay, so a lot of people went to grad school in 2008 because of the market conditions, and that was a good time to go to grad school. Maybe market-wise, it could be if you can't find something and that you can't find a job. But I think that from a recruiting standpoint, going straight through schooling-wise isn't super appealing to employers unless it's law school, in which case it's a little bit different. But I didn't go to grad school at all, but I think I'm the only one in my Rhodes Friends group that did not, but almost every one of them went after a few years of work experience.
And a lot of the programs in DC, so I'm talking about Georgetown, GW, even Hopkins or American, do night classes. So you have the ability to both work and go to grad school here. But another reason to wait, in addition to all those good reasons that Chrissy says, is sometimes you just don't really have a feel for what it is you want to do.
Yeah.
Or you may find there was something completely different that interests you, and it's good to kind of get a feel for that before you jump into it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was looking at some of those American and Georgetown, and a lot of them do have like online classes or night classes you can do as well at the same time.
I would say if you have a sense of where you want to be and what industry you want to be in, as you're talking to people, ask them what graduate programs they most respect, or say, when people come to you from X school, do you find that as like a higher value than something else? I'm sure it changes year to year. It's not always solid, but I can tell you, for example, a rule of thumb when I was on the Hill was that the GW graduate program was way more valuable than the Georgetown graduate program for political science. But that was 12 years ago. I'm not endorsing either. I'm sure it flips from time to time, but it's good to know, just as you're talking to people, what the sense is currently.
Yeah, it's super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Sophie?
Yeah, so I have a question. It's kind of, you may not have an answer to it, but I guess just as someone who did or is about to just graduate, just going into like market wise, what you potentially like in your individual jobs potentially foresee your business is requiring, or what ways to like, I don't even make our resume look as if it's more available for remote positions, et cetera. Like, I don't know. It's obviously it's hard to foresee that because this is such an odd time with like everything being unknown, but I guess any kind of feedback in terms of that, and that's a little bit more specific to class of 2020 and just like everything going on right now. But just any words of advice you may have for that would be extremely helpful. Yeah, and thank you guys for your time as well.
Anybody want to jump in?
I think as far as from like the remote working perspective, at least with my company, and I know with several other law firms and private equity companies, if you know, they're not really looking at, you know, do you have the ability to work remotely? You know, because we just hired back in March, I had 4 or 5 new coworkers who started immediately working from home. And, you know, the company, they sent a monitor, they sent the laptop, you know, any machinery or office equipment that you need, has been provided by the company. That being said, I fully realize that law firms and private equity is a very narrow set of fields as far as that goes to have a perspective. So I don't really have a perspective in a more broad sense, I don't think. But it can be, I guess, kind of challenging to find a way to say that basically in a cover letter or reflect that on your resume. But I would say focus more on the content of your resume rather than making sure that a company or employer knows that you're willing to work remote. I think in this particular weird scenario, you know, it's everyone's willing to work remotely, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would say it's really position specific. So if you're applying to a resource specialist job that you find online and you see, I always scroll right down to the requirements and make sure that every bullet point that their requirements, there is that exact phrasing on your resume, like manage projects within tight deadlines, or you know, utilize Spanish speaking skills to translate between clients, or anything that you can pull from a job description you're applying for and using that exact phraseology on your resume is going to be helpful. And then I also was going to mention to y'all, you know, what industries we see hiring right now. So my business has slowed down a lot because hiring has slowed down a lot. There are a few industries that we know are still are pretty consistent in terms of hiring. One of them, and I think Ben might have mentioned this earlier, but defense contractors. So government contractors, they're pretty stable because they've been funded by government contracts. So sometimes USAID is a little bit shaky, but like a DoD funded government contractor. And if you just start Googling small government contractors in DC, you're going to get like overwhelmed. Like I mentioned Booz Allen, where Joanna works, that's a huge one. There's a million smaller ones. Once you look at the website, look what job openings they have available. If there's anything that even close to appeals to you, tailor your resume for that job, apply, follow up with a phone call 2 days later, follow up with an email a week later, keep dripping. So defense contractors, and then healthcare, but that's not, it's more like a healthcare practice, and then the mortgage industry. So I understand that mortgage industry is hiring like loan processors. Not that I know anyone necessarily has that kind of experience on the call here. And then financial services, actually, Meredith, and I don't know if you see this as much in Carlisle, but financial services is pretty good right now. And also some of my nonprofit clients are still hiring.
Okay, Ben, I saw you'd raise your hand again. Do you have another question?
Yeah, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That DC's kind of employment market generally works a little bit differently than a lot of other places in the country, where it's much more acceptable and regular for there to be a lot of job transition, where, you know, you may be at a place for 1 year and you flip from that next place in another year. Would you guys, what do you guys have to say about that? And maybe also, is there value in kind of sticking your heels in at a place to kind of go against or zig when everybody's zagging, I guess?
I can address this again. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but like from a recruiter perspective, like one of the top things that my clients look for in resumes is tenure. So if you have that stick-to-itiveness when everybody else is zagging, I love that phrasing. You know, you zig and they zag. I think that really does show some commitment, especially if you feel like you can get some growth where you are currently. I think, you know, changing jobs every year is not ideal. It's not going to, you know, kill your resume, because like you said, people in DC sort of understand that people are opportunists here. But you know, I think that if you can dig your heels in somewhere, that's absolutely like super appealing.
Chrissy, do you think it's easier to explain like year-to-year job changes earlier in your career though? Like, do you think people are sort of more,
Yeah, no, good point. I mean, you know, like Andrews was saying, if you land in something and you're like, this is not for me, and then you transition and you find something else and you're like, oh, that's not for me either. I mean, people pretty much understand that. You know, you go from Hill to sales to research or whatever. Yeah, I think absolutely.
We've got just a couple more minutes for maybe one more question if there is one. Okay, well then, thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today and taking time out of your day to be with us and answer these questions for our students. We really, really appreciate it. And students, thank you for participating and being here. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. This is fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Everybody, give us a call.
Yeah.
Do not hesitate to reach out to the alumni office either to get names and addresses for folks, because as you see, it's not just alums who want to help you in DC, parents do as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me or Tracy or Sandy know. We can get you connected to people.
Right. Good luck and congratulations to all those seniors.
Yes, congrats.
New grads, yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Hey,
all right, bye guys.
Thank
Okay, thanks for doing this. Take care.